Bill Tenny-Brittian with the Monday's Catalytic Brief. This is my first time at it, so we're see how this goes. Thanks for joining me. Listen, I want to talk this week about the real reason that church plans fail to produce growth. And the reality is they do. The reality of the situation is that every year we make our plans. We sit down with the committee, we sit down with the team, we make plans, and what do we end up with? We end up with a wonderful document, a calendar full of stuff, and nothing really changes, because the reality is that most church plans, they look impressive, but they change almost nothing. Because if planning doesn't change behavior, then it's not strategic planning. It's just time-consuming planning, doing some activities that go, woohoo, let's try and get this done. But hey, very little happens other than the events we planned, the meetings we planned, et cetera, will all be on the calendar, and they'll all be locked in, and we're going to go forward with them, whether they are advantageous for growing our church, making disciples, or not. Here's the reality, folks, is that churches don't fail suddenly. What they do is they repeat the same behavior they did the year before, and the year before, and the year before, ad nauseum. And, my guess is if you have a Christmas Eve worship service, most churches do, that your Christmas Eve worship service looks a lot like last year's and the years before and the year before, even though, now, maybe it was great. Maybe it was fabulous. Maybe you got lots of first-time visitors. Maybe those first-time visitors, you got their contact information, you're ready to go, and you're going to follow up, and they're going to show up or have been showing up last week, and they'll show up again next week. But here's the reality, is that probably not. Probably what happened before is what's going to happen again. So we've got to make some changes in how we plan. And the real problem is that planning itself gets treated like it is an event, as opposed to as a leadership tool. It's get all the stuff laid out, as opposed to saying, hey, folks, you're responsible. This is what's going to happen. These are the outcomes that we're expecting, and so on. Everything in your planning needs to be connected to your mission and vision. And here's the reality, is that most churches don't do that. Most churches don't look at their mission statement much, and they almost look at it not at all when it comes to planning. We get goals that are written down, but the goals don't match the mission. They don't match the vision. They're not taking us forward. They're not making disciples. They're plans for what we've always done and hope that we're going to see something different. And when those goals are written down, but they don't match the calendar and they don't further the mission, then you're going nowhere. We end up with more meetings. We end up with priorities that don't sharpen our church, that don't propel us forward with new disciples, new visitors, returning guests, and so on. Activity begins to replace the clarity of mission and the clarity of vision. And everyone stays busy, and the church stays stuck. So we have to make some changes, folks. That's the key. If we're going to do something different this year, if we're going to make things different, we're going to have to do some things differently. And here's what we need to do, is that strategic planning only works when it reshapes our behavior, when it actually has action steps, who's doing what, when, why, and the why is the critical planning piece. Your mission has to be on top of every single event, every single meeting, every single thing that your church does. How does it fulfill the mission? Does it make more disciples? Of course, that is the mission of the church, make more disciples, right? Better disciples, more disciples, and of course, more disciples always make better disciples. So strategic planning keeps that front and center focused all the way through. If we're not doing that, then we're just planning for planning's sake. Because if nothing changes on Monday, then nothing really changed at all. Your calendar reveals the real priority, the real problem. If you look at your calendar for last year, look at what you did. Look at what was accomplished, and all the events that were accomplished, the meetings you had, and then ask yourself, look at the actual numbers. What were the results of those events, of those meetings, of your preaching? How many baptisms did you do? How many new visitors turned into active members? What's our average worship attendance? Did it go up this year or go down this year? And if it didn't go up significantly, then we really need to evaluate what we did to see what needs to change. And of course, what needs to change, at least in my contention, is that putting the mission first, creating events, creating sermon series, creating everything, including our meetings, that are propelling our mission forward. Sermons, meetings, outreach, all the plans that you make have got to be, how does this fulfill our mission? If we're not ruthless at fulfilling the mission, then what we're going to get is the same thing we've gotten for the last however many years it's been. Now, there's a lot of deeper layers to this. We can go into this. In fact, if you're interested, we'll be talking about this on this week's Catalytic Conversation on Thursday, 10 o'clock Central Time. That's January 8th, in case you're watching this really late after this week or whatever. So it'll be available. The recordings are always available on our Facebook group. I have all the information for that down in the chat, in the discussion. All right, listen. Why this matters right now is because we're making plans. This is the week. If we didn't do it last week in the down week, we're doing it this week. We're getting down and getting serious about planning. And we want to get things put onto our calendar that are actually going to move the needle. The reality is that burnout happens when everything feels urgent. And everything feels urgent when we don't have a plan, when we haven't calendared it, we haven't put it in and gone from there. Churches stagnate when no one really knows what matters and when they don't know why they're doing it. We're just doing it because we've always done it. So, Pastor, you carry the pressure for clarity. You're the one who brings the clarity of mission into your church and into your planning. So make sure that happens. All right. So if you want to know more, if you want to go deep into planning this year, join me for the Catalytic Conversation on Thursday. The link and the information is down below for registering. And of course, I have a QR code. Let's see, where's my QR code? Right there. There it is showing up. And click on that, or take a picture of that QR code and get registered. We've got some goodies that'll be there for you if you register.